Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. My name is Mark R. LePage, and you are listening to Entre Architect Podcast, where each week I speak with inspiring, passionate people who share their knowledge and expertise, all to help you build a better business as a small firm entrepreneur architect. Today's guest is my friend and co-founder at Gābl Media, Dimitrius Lynch. Dimitrius is an architect and entrepreneur licensed in California, Leading Lines, a creative architecture studio driven by passion for thoughtful design. As the founder of Spaces podcast and co-founder at Gābl Media, Dimitrius works to inspire meaningful conversations about architecture and the built environment. His mission is to enhance public understanding of how designs shape our everyday experiences, bridging the gap between our profession and the communities it serves. Dimitrius Lynch, welcome back to Entre Architect Podcast.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me back. Excited to be back in the studio with you.
Yeah, it's been a long time since you and I have been in the studio recording together. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I think that was back in like 2019 or 20, something like that.
18,
That was a while ago.
2018.
Wow.
I don't remember exactly the month. It was episode 232, and we were talking about Spaces Podcast and your mission and all of that. I looked it up just before we started recording, episode 232. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Looking forward to chatting today.
Yeah, me too. So if you want to understand Dimitrius's origin story and background, we're not going to talk about that today because he's been here before. So go back to episode 232 and listen to that full episode. And you'll get the background on Spaces Podcast. You'll understand Dimitrius and his background and how he found his way to architecture. Today, I invited Dimitrius on the show because he just recently released a new podcast series on the Spaces Podcast feed called Going Green. And it is an examination of humanity's evolving relationship with the environment throughout history. He talks about all of the different pieces of environmental history, the Dust Bowl, Rachel Carson's contributions, all of the steps along the way, and gets into the modern challenges that we are facing today with corporate responsibility, energy policies, climate change. It's basically an entire history of climate and going green. Dimitrius, can you share a little bit more about that? Share about why you decided to put this together, this series called Going Green. What was the motivation behind it, and what are you trying to accomplish with it?
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. It's an incredible story looking at our relationship with the environment and kind of how we perceive particularly climate change and answering the question why. The impetus of creating this was really just kind of looking at the environment around us today, all of the intense fires that are happening here in California, Canada, Australia, the hurricanes that are increasing there through the South and East Coasts, and extreme weather events that are happening all over the place. And I just started to think, this has progressively increased over time. And why have we been so slow to react to it? And that was kind of the start of what got me to tackle this topic. It's a wide-ranging story that touches on a lot of different aspects to answer that question of why we've been so slow to address it, and to try to answer the question for those that still may not believe that climate change is real, to sort of present all of the evidence over time that has existed, how long we've known, and what has happened to shift the belief about climate change being real. So that's kind of why, and kind of what I jumped into unknowingly, how deep the rabbit hole was going to get.
Yes, and that's exactly what I want to talk about. I encourage you to go subscribe to Spaces Podcast. You can go to lines.studio/podcast. Lines is spelled with a Y. So lines.studio/podcast is the page where you can go to learn more about Spaces and more about the Going Green series. It's a very important conversation. It's a very important topic. And the podcast goes very, very deep. It is a true podcast documentary. And that's what I want to talk about here today. So I encourage you to go subscribe, go listen to the 10 episode series. We're not going to dive deep into the actual topic today because I want you to go listen to it. So lines.studio/podcast. I want to talk about how you did this. Like you said, maybe you didn't know how deep you were getting yourself, but this series is a true documentary. It starts at the beginning and takes us to today, and it goes very deep in data and research. And so I want to talk about the process of developing a documentary podcast. Can we talk about the beginning? Like, you just talked about the inspiration, but how did you start to plan out a series like this? And what was it at first, and then like what was it when you were finished? Because I'm sure it was very, very different when you were finished than it was when you first started. How did you get started?
Yeah, and a peek into that evolution, I was making modifications up until the last second, finding things literally the day that I was about to post an episode. I was still finding more and more information. But going back to the beginning, it really started with sort of a high level research just to figure out what the timeline generally looked like and the major points that we changed. We found out information about our climate events that happened, like the Dust Bowl and various policies that occurred over time. So, all the big major points, and kind of organized that into an outline and sort of started to shift things around as far as when things occurred, looked at who were the major players in that event or that policy, and started to try to find out when things started, where they lined up in the timeline, and kind of organizing it in that fashion, sort of as a high level. And that was kind of the beginning, really, is really just understanding the big picture.
Did you know that it was going to be a 10 episode series when you started? Was that the plan, or did it evolve to become that?
Yeah, looking at kind of the high level content, I mapped it out as going to be 10 episodes. So it was really hard to try to stick with that and to figure out what I would cut and keep to really tell the story, because I thought 10 would be a good solid number to keep people's attention and not go too overboard. So looking at the whole timeline, I figured 10 was a good marker that I could cover everything and make it a worthwhile series.
Without being like a university professor and having access to a full library and database of information, how did you even know where to collect the information that you've collected? And the sound bites that you have in the show are sound bites from history. So we're listening to actual sound bites and news reports and speeches and all of the different pieces that you collected. How did you find all that information and know where to look?
I'm a pretty avid podcaster, and I follow a lot of other podcast content that's similar to the style that I presented here. And I've learned some of the tips and tricks of places that you can find some content, but YouTube was a big help in tracking down some pieces. The Library of Congress has a ton of valuable resources. C-SPAN, I was enthused to find, was a fantastic resource of actual audio and video content.
So C-SPAN has a full library of audio?
Yeah, they have an amazing website. I would highly recommend anybody that's looking for content or just want to learn more about certain events and people. You can easily search by name, you can search by events, dates, and it'll pull up a whole catalog of videos, audio content, anything you're looking for. Super useful website for anyone that's looking for any information. But going through this whole experience, I've developed such an appreciation for journalists and the work that they do and all of the Freedom of Information Act and the requests that they make to get all of this content, because it's all there now, just readily available. You don't have to do a whole lot of digging, but you can find all this information out there in the public realm, and you can cross-check it against other, which I had to do is cross-check against several sources to verify that it was the right information and I wasn't getting led down some crazy path. So verifying all of that information, and then you have the added value of video and audio content to hear people say what you read somewhere else.
Yeah. So if you find a piece about a specific topic that you want to focus on, then you go and research that topic to find the clips that you're looking for.
Yes. And that was a tough process. So I would generally come across an article that I would read through, kind of pull the major points, and the article would either have a date or in the content, it would reference an event that that person was at where they said this thing. And so then I would go to C-SPAN and search the date, search the person, or if they didn't have it, if it was prior to, because C-SPAN came around in the end of the 70s. So anything prior to that, sometimes YouTube had it, Library of Congress might have it. So that was the kind of process to cross-check and find audio and video that I could, as best as I could, or at the very least, find multiple articles that reference the same content to confirm the story.
I can imagine that it's much like a scavenger hunt where you know what you're looking for. You don't exactly know where to find it, but you know it's out there.
Yeah.
And so you start looking for it in all these different places. And I can imagine that when you find it, you get a sense of adrenaline and rush, right? Is that what happens when you actually find it and it's like, there it is?
Yeah. It's so exciting to go through.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can spend quite a bit of time, a couple hours looking for one piece of content. Sometimes you don't find it just because for whatever reason you were not searching the right words that day. This happened a couple times where something would pop in my head like, oh, I didn't search it this way. And I'm like the week of about to publish and I would find the audio clip that I was looking for and find it. And just because I searched it a different way and be able to grab it just in time. But yeah, the rush you get when you finally find something, it's definitely like that scavenger hunt accomplishment.
I could imagine that becoming addictive, as hard as the process was to create this series. I could imagine that that could be, really exciting, that you'd want to do that again.
Yeah. By the end of this, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this again, all of this work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, probably not a 10-episode series. I mean, your Spaces podcast, you've always done research and you've always presented a source of history, right? You've always, in order to learn what you're talking about, you've always gone back in history, which is part of the segment of your shows, to share a piece of, that's one of the reasons I love your podcast, is because it does go back and you learn a little piece of history of how we got to where we are today. And then you took that concept and expanded it into this larger documentary.
Yeah. Even those episodes took quite a bit of research, but
yeah,
at the end of this, I was questioning if I want to do it again, but to that addictive point, after a couple weeks of sitting on it, I'm like, I could do that again.
You forget about the pain. Yeah.
Yeah. What's the next topic? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So once you go through that process of gathering all that information, finding all the pieces, I'm assuming there's some sort of structure in storing all of that so you can go back and find it after you found it, because there's got to be a specific process that you go through. Can you talk about that a little bit, sort of taking the information and organizing it so you're ready to get to the next step, which would be organizing it into a story, right? Because once you gather all this information, you don't want to just record, here's what they said and here's why they said it. You're actually creating a timeline and a story behind it. Can you share a little bit about organizing the data and the research and crafting it into a story?
Yeah. From a tangible perspective, it was a matter of gathering all of the potential content, bookmarking everything. And I have a whole folder of this season and what the episodes would lay out as. And first, I kind of bookmarked everything and I looked at what the full story arc was going to be. And as I'm sort of sifting through all of the various pieces of content to generate the story part of it, there's some things that you really kind of need as sort of the basis. And that's really the characters are one of the key parts of any story. So you have to have those people, those individuals, and being able to tell more about them than just what the event was. So trying to identify who those key characters are. And I tried to go after people that were not necessarily just kind of the mainstream people that everyone has heard about. I tried to pick people that you may know them in one way, but this kind of tells a different aspect of their story, like George Washington Carver. And everybody knows him as the peanut guy is kind of what he was referred to as, the inventor of peanut butter and all the various aspects to use peanuts. But telling his connection to the Dust Bowl and him educating the US government about how to do sustainable farming and all these other things that he contributed. So finding those individuals that contributed to our climate story, our environmental story, and building out, their backstory, they're going into their origin story in a sense. So that was a lot of additional research to find those characters, identify the characters, and then build on their story and connect it to why they matter and what they did in contribution to our environmental story. So that was another level of organization, is once you have that character, where exactly do you put them in to not only grab the audience's attention, but to slot them in the timeline of, because they may have come along well before the event, but do you kind of set them up in episode 1 when their actual contribution was in episode 5 and you kind of come back to it? Or do you tell it, connected to it? So that was a whole lot of shuffling pieces around when would be the most opportune time to introduce a character and how their story connects to the overall arc. So that was a whole lot of moving pieces back and forth. And that's just an exercise of trying to figure out what works best for you as a storyteller. Everybody has their own kind of style and interest and what piques their own interests. So that was kind of how I approached that portion of it.
Yeah. Did you have any challenges in balancing the story with the factual data that you've been collecting? Like wanting to tell that story, but also knowing that this is the data that you want to share? Were there points where you sort of struggle with that?
Not necessarily, because as far as the stories of the individuals, I kind of told the aspects of their story that tied to ultimately the data that I was trying to get across, the event that I was trying to get across. So telling their story in the context of the arc. The only thing I would say was a conflict really is they had really interesting stories overall. And there were some aspects that just went too far off of the point of the story where I had to just kind of leave that. So maybe if it was really interesting and I thought worth sharing, I would sort of drop a single line about whatever it is. And if it piques someone's interest, they can, pull that thread themselves, but try to refine it and keep it as tight as possible to the overall purpose.
Do you have any method of sharing the additional information that you've collected throughout the show, both sort of background on the story, but also the additional content that you've collected that people might find interesting? Are there ways that we can go and see what you've shared in addition to listening to the episode?
Yeah, on the website, lines.studio/podcasts, that's kind of the main entry point, but there is a Going Green page as well. So it's lines.studio/podcasts/going green. And on that page, you can see each episode. And in those episodes, I put all the sources that I've came across. So you have direct links to all the articles, all of the C-SPAN pages. I've also posted actual videos and some of the audio that I used. So you should be able to get through everything that I used for those episodes on that page under, I think it's the sources of each episode. So I list all of that stuff so you can kind of backtrack my path through building the episode.
Yeah. So lines with a Y, lines.studio/podcast. You could go find that there. Let's take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors for their support of this episode. Architects, listen up. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world and is going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. I know this community of small firm architects very well, and I see many of you struggling. That's why I reached out to this episode's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote. And by filling out just a few questions, BetterHelp can match you with a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in the show notes. It's betterhelp.com/architect. Just use that link, betterhelp.com/architect. Clicking that link helps support this podcast, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. So you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. If you need someone to talk to, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the show notes or visit betterhelp.com/architect. That's betterhelp.com/architect. Thank you to BetterHelp for supporting this podcast and for supporting our community of small firm architects. ARCAT's Spec Wizard is the tool that will help you save time writing specifications. Going through the manufacturer's specification line by line to find the right product leads to frustration and errors. And that's where Spec Wizard comes in. It's a free, patented tool that allows you to select products and options error-free and generate a 3-part specification in minutes. Go to arcat.com, that's ARCAT.com, and try Spec Wizard today. Please visit our sponsors today and thank them. Thank them for supporting you, the EntreArchitect community. After you collect all that information and start developing it into a story, part of the process in podcasting is scripting. And much of what you presented is scripted, right? So you're presenting information and clips and recordings, but you're also telling a scripted narrative story. Can you share a little bit about that process? How do you develop a script, and how tied do you stay to the script versus being more spontaneous and going off the script and sharing, just what comes to mind? Is it purely scripted?
Yeah, for something of this magnitude, it had to be purely scripted. And I didn't want to wing it too much because, one, I might get something wrong or might just create a lot of extra effort and work on the editing side.
I've experienced that. There are many times where I was reading a script and then thinking I'm going to go off script and start going off script, and then it not working, and then start, just read the words, Mark. Just read the words. Just read the words.
Yeah. Like, I would prefer, and maybe sometime down the line, once I get a little more comfortable, I'll be able to kind of go off script a little bit, because it just sounds more authentic and easier. I know that, but scripting is definitely the most efficient way to keep it tight, to get across your point and to not put way too much extra work on yourself or veer down long paths that don't get across to the audience.
You waste a lot of time if it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. But that process of scripting is really just kind of pulling together all of the sources, all of the information. And again, you as a storyteller, recrafting all of that information into your own words and style. A big part of it really is the flow and how you want to introduce information to people. Because I'll read lots of articles, and from an entertainment value, I'm like, this section would have been so much more powerful if you moved it down here. So just a lot of that, moving pieces around and then putting my own touch on the words. And then I did have to lean on, which I would highly recommend for anybody, ChatGPT has been a godsend.
Yeah.
Because you can, once you get your pass through, you can say, typically 100 words written are about a minute of speaking time, roughly. So I can tell ChatGPT, if I'm super long on a script, I can say, cut this down to 4,000 words or whatever, tell it to maintain the same structure and everything. And it'll spit back out, a reasonable script condensed to where I need it with all the information that I want to get across. And then I have to go back through that to make sure, the words flow the way that I want and further polish it a little bit more to refine it and get it to where I need it. But that was essentially the process of kind of crafting each of those scripts. And then really the biggest part for something like this was looking at trying to develop the entire story, because I want to make sure that the points all connect and the story flows, and that if I'm referencing something, that it makes sense that it referenced, a previous episode, and I'm not regurgitating information and, wearing out the audience by saying the same thing over and over again. I can quickly reference back to a previous episode or set up something that's going to come in episode 8 in episode 5. So that was a big part, really, too, of laying out the full story and making sure I was doing those points of setup and back referencing.
Did you write all the scripts throughout the process before you started recording, or did you just outline it and then write the scripts just before you recorded?
50-50. I got all of my scripts probably to a 75% level. And then as I was recording or about to record, I would, read through it again. And sometimes while I was recording, I would make modifications just because it didn't feel right, or I was struggling with a sentence structure. So I would have to do a lot of modifications and that sort of things. And again, sometimes I would find information the day of and have to make adjustments there. So it always led to more modifications of scripts down the line, but probably had all scripts to about a 75% level and built them up as I was leading up to those recordings for each episode.
So being a podcaster, recording it comes naturally, right? You do that all the time. You're also a producer and an editor at Gābl Media, so that's pretty second nature at this point. Can you talk about that process of recording and getting your sound quality right, but also you could talk about the actual production of the podcast, which you do great at Spaces as well, is the sound design and the additional pieces, taking all those clips, but also bringing in additional sounds in order to make the story flow better and sound better and be more entertaining. What is that process like to get all of that to work?
So first, a huge shout out to our team at Gābl Media, particularly Jeff Alvarez, who I had to hand off the production to someone else on this project because there was no way I could get this done in a reasonable time if I did it all by myself.
Plus, we have a tremendous team there that's super talented with a tremendous background. So it makes sense to do that.
Yeah, he brought things to this that I may not have thought about because he has his own approach and experience. And so he did things that I wouldn't have thought of. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. He made audio additions that just elevated it a little bit more. But being a editor as well, I kind of approached it with certain things in mind of, I wanted it to transition musically in these certain areas or have certain sound effects or clips. So I kind of blocked out that structure of kind of how I wanted that to work out, and then coordinated with Jeff, who brought his talents to it as a musician himself and producer. He had his aspects that he brought to it to elevate it. And I had blocked out all of the music, selected all of the music, and sort of blocked out when to use them and handed it over to him just as a rough outline and rough idea. And then he just took it and ran with it to do all of the sound design and bring it to a level that if you listen, I think you'd be quite impressed. I would put this up against, quite a few of the big name podcast creators out there.
I agree. If someone said that this was an NPR documentary, I wouldn't be surprised. It's certainly at that level of research and storytelling and production for sure.
Yeah. So it was a process from that point, handing it over, just listening and making little tweaks here and there. But he was amazing in getting that sound design and all of the audio quality to a great level. And then I do have to point out, for anyone that is taking on something like this, audio quality from a recording standpoint is super important. We use Riverside, highly recommend Riverside. It's a remote based software that you can use to record. And then there's other software and programs that you can use, but high quality mic, high quality recording tool just to get your audio up front good. And then you can handle quite a bit in post production. And then that sound design takes it up to a whole nother level.
Yeah. How long did it take from the very beginning of coming up with the idea and saying, yes, I'm going to do this, till the final episode was published and it was out there? How long did that take?
So February 5th, 2024 was the day I started.
Wow.
And I started publishing, I think in September or end of August, something like that. So it was about, 6 months or so. And well over, I think I'm undershooting it, but well over 600 hours of actual work.
Yeah. And that doesn't take into account all of the time just thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's several days of time
right.
where I'm just kind of sitting, while I'm driving, thinking about how an edit can work out or how I can make a transition in the story.
Yeah. So this is definitely, like I mentioned earlier in our conversation, that this is a documentary that's an important story. It goes deep. It's educational. It is very easily something that could be picked up by universities and high schools as part of their curriculum. That's the depth of it. And hopefully that happens. Do you have any plans to help foster it beyond just publishing it as a podcast series? Are there ways that you can leverage it so it has greater impact in the future?
As far as in the immediate, I plan to submit it for awards to see if I can get anything from that. And then going to repurpose a few things into video content to try to get that aspect of it out. YouTube is a great search engine, so hopefully that will facilitate spreading the story out there. I haven't really thought about how I could approach, getting it into schools or anything like that. If there's someone that has a connection that thinks this would be worth that effort, I'd love for you to reach out to me.
Start with your own. Go back to your own university and say, hey, I did this thing. You should go look at it. It's yours if you want it.
Yeah. So that's one way that I could probably potentially do it. We're also expanding on the story in a way through Gābl Media. We have an event. We're doing it's basically a webinar series that we call Gābl Media All Access. Our first event is coming up November 20th. It's 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern, where I've invited 4 professionals that are in the sustainability and environmental realm that are going to talk about climate change, how to design sustainable design, managing carbon and all those various aspects. So those professionals will be showing up. And those people are Stephen Bierstecker. I'm going to butcher his name. Bierstecker. He's an architect and he's super well known on LinkedIn for educating people and architects, the general public and architects about carbon in architecture and how to manage carbon in our projects. Majora Carter, she's a real estate developer, urban revitalization strategy consultant. She's also a MacArthur Fellow and Peabody Award-winning broadcaster. She will be joining us. Eric Corey Freed. He has a long list of credentials behind his name, but he's a principal and director of sustainability at Canon Design. And I think The Entre Architect community may be familiar with Farah Kadir. She's also a sustainability expert. She's been to a few events and been on some of the podcasts. She will also be joining the panel. So those four people, I think, are going to bring a wealth of knowledge. So if you love the podcast, and even if you don't, listen to the podcast, but have an interest in sustainability and climate action, I think this event will be perfect for you. We're going to get it AIA credit for it. It'll be a HSW. And for Gābl Media members, you'll be able to get that credit. So make sure you go to Gābl Media. I'll give you one place to go. GableMedia.com/all-access. And that's GABLmedia.com/all-access. And there you can see the list. You can see more information on the event. And also, if you're not currently a Gābl Media member, you'll see a link to become one, and you'll be able to get credits for attending this event. But going back to your original question, that's part of the expansion of this and trying to get the word out as much as possible. But happy to hear more ideas about how I can expand this story and get it out in front of more people.
Yeah. So if anybody has any contacts or connections that you can introduce to Dimitrius, reach out to him. Definitely sign up for Gābl Media All Access, GABLmedia.com/all-access. Membership at Gābl Media is $29 a year, not a month, a year, $29 a year. So that's a no-brainer. Go sign up for Gābl Media members. That will not only give you access to All Access and get you credit for the webinars that we're putting together, but there's an entire library of podcast episodes that you can listen to and get AIA credit, including HSWs. So go there. GABLmedia.com/members will get you into the membership, but GABLmedia.com/all-access will get all the information for the first All Access series, which is going to be featuring Going Green and Dimitrius and his panel. Dimitrius, thank you for coming by and sharing the behind the scenes of Going Green. It's something that was very interesting to me when we started talking about it the other day. And I'm like, we should talk about this on the podcast. I think it's a very interesting topic, not only of the topic of the series that you've created, but understanding how you need to go through the process of creating a documentary podcast like Going Green. And so thank you for sharing that information. Before we go, I want to get your take on the final question that I ask all my guests. You're talking right now to thousands of small firm architects, mostly business owners. What would you say is one thing that a small firm architect can do today to build a better business for tomorrow?
Kind of on the theme of today, tell your story. We've talked about this a number of times. I think that we've been on podcasts and events together. I try to say it as much as possible. I think one of the biggest disservices that we've run into as a profession is the lack of storytelling about what we do, the value we provide. We keep waiting, but it's just not going to come from AIA or NCARB in that level or any of the legacy media that's out there. And honestly, this might not be their job. It's up to each individual one of us to tell our own story, our unique projects that we work on, our unique focuses that we have on the work that we do, however you possibly can, whether it's a podcast, video content, written content on social media, whatever it is, we all have to tell our story because that's the only way that our profession is going to shift the way that people think about the work that we do or not think about the work that we do. We have to control our own narrative and get as much as we can out there. I know it can be daunting sometimes, but whatever the easiest way for you to do, and again, if it's just a little blurb on social media, do that. We just all have to share our story in some aspect, in some way to kind of turn the tide and get people to understand the value that we provide.
His name is Dimitrius Lynch. His firm, he's an architect in addition to all of these other things he does. His firm is Lines with a Y, so Lynes. Lines Studio. The website is lines.studio. And the podcast, you can learn more about Spaces podcast and the Going Green series at lines.studio/podcast. Gābl Media, you should go learn more about Gābl Media. If you are interested in telling your story in the form of a podcast, we can help you. We have a service that helps you do that. Basically a turnkey white label service where if you want to tell your story, you record it, we take care of everything else. So we can help you create that podcast at Gābl Media. So gablmedia.com is the website for that. If you're interested in doing that, just reach out to either Dimitrius or me.
Even if you want to tell your story outside of podcasting only, we still love to talk to you.
True. Yes.
However we can to help kind of guide that process for you.
Yes. Thank you for that, for sure. So reach out to Dimitrius or me. Our mission is to help you share your story. So reach out to us. For the All Access series, the first one is November 20th. That will be the one for Going Green. gablmedia.com/all-access for the information for that. Go sign up for that right now. And we'll see you in November at the All Access webinar. Dimitrius, thank you for all you do, for your commitment to Gābl Media and helping our profession tell their story. Thank you for spending all this time and effort to create Going Green. It is something that will continue to share throughout the future because it is the history of going green, basically in our country. So thank you for all of the effort that you put into this series. And thank you for being here with me today at Entre Architect Podcast.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Really enjoyed it.
If you liked this episode of Entre Architect Podcast, please share a link to this episode with a friend. Either just click the share button or highlight the URL and send the link to this episode with a friend, because that's how Entre Architect has grown to serve thousands more architects just like you throughout the 10 plus years of Entre Architect. That's how we've grown, architect to architect. So I would love for you to share this episode and all the episodes with one friend every week. We'd love that. And thank you to our sponsors for this episode. We don't have an episode if there's no sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors. Links to those sponsors, which you should go visit and click, and all the resources that we discussed today for this specific episode, they are all available at entrearchitect.com/podcast. Every episode that we've recorded is there, entrearchitect.com/podcast. Go click the links to the sponsors and say hello. Entre Architect is a member of the Gābl Media podcast network. You should go visit that at gablmedia.com. That is the next evolution of interactive media and resources for the AEC community. You can now earn continuing education credits for listening to select episodes of this podcast, Entre Architect Podcast. Yes, AIA CEUs for listening to a podcast. It's there, and many other podcasts are there as well, and you can listen to all of them and get credit. Learn more about our program, Gābl Members Program, at the gablmedia.com/members website. That's GABL media.com/members. And if you are a small firm architect, join us today at Entre Architect Network. That is the worldwide organization for small firm entrepreneur architects. If you own your own architecture firm, you are an entrepreneur architect. You are an Entre Architect. With weekly live group business coaching, we have business coaching there, monthly live business training with AIA CEUs, 2 a month, so 24 AIA credits per year, including 12 of those are HSWs. We have them in the membership. Business resources, all the resources you need to run your business, special session webinars, mastermind groups, and a thriving community of small firm architects just like you. Hundreds of architects are there waiting for you to join. So we provide the support and encouragement you need to succeed as a small firm architect. I know that you haven't been trained as a business person when you launched your firm. That's what we do. Come learn how to run a business at Entre Architect Network. And today you can go join right now for free for 30 days at this link, entrearchitect.com/30 days will give you free 30 days for membership. Go check it out at entrearchitect.com/30 days, and I will see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of Entre Architect Podcast. My name is Mark R. LePage, and I want you to remember 3 words: love, learn, share. Have a great day.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gābl Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gābl Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gābl Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gābl Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark R. LePage, founder of Entree Architect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you, and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short haul, frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.